Шановні колеги, Український медіа-центр продовжує.
Esteemed colleagues, we will continue our working today, and we are going to talk about the new opportunities in the energy sector of Ukraine. And in particular, today we are going to hear the news from the representative of Norway. The floor is given to our esteemed speakers. You're welcome. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Richard Scarborough. I'm Deputy Head of the Mission of the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Kyiv. It's my pleasure to talk about this project today, which we have been supporting on the part of the Norwegian Embassy here in Ukraine. This project is just one among a number of different support activities in the Norway support to Ukraine. It's about 21 million euros this year in the major sectors which we are supporting is the energy sector, assistance given in the form of, the assistance to be given to the reforms in the justice sector, plus Euro integration. And this project specifically is really very interesting one because we are talking about the energy sector and, of course, the hydro energy power plants. And in Norway, this is the most important topic after the coal oil sector. We have 96-97% of the total power generated in Norway is the hydroelectric power plants. It's their share. This is the topic which the Norway companies and experts know really well. That's why we decided to give support to a similar project here in Ukraine, taking into consideration the opportunities which are available in this sector. I believe that the project which we have completed will be instrumental in helping the potential investors to understand the terms and conditions exist in Ukraine and different laws, most of them are in the Ukrainian language, definitely, and I believe that it's really very beneficial to have a book which would describe everything in the English language and which could help the potential investors to better understand what risks they can face here. There are also several recommendations which we do hope our Ukrainian partners and the authorities will thoroughly study. And thus, we do hope that this project can give an impetus and provide the opportunity both to the Norwegian investors also, to better study the Ukrainian market in the, let's say, the potential projects which we could think about in the hydroelectric power sector. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Representing Norwegian consultancy ACE, I have been contributing to this report over the last months, and as already described, this is an input, hopefully a positive push in the direction of making it a little bit more straightforward, easier or for investors to see the opportunities and not at least realize the opportunities when it comes to small-scale hydro in Ukraine. We have taken the let's say the current situation as a starting point. It's overview, so that means this is not the only the only sort of way forward or the only view that can be presented. We have tried to describe how an investor slash developer should sort of maneuver in this landscape of lots of licenses to apply for, local, central, and so on. Then we have, on the basis of this, we have made our recommendations in terms of what could be improved, make it easier, smoother, and hopefully that's being at least the best part of that. Hopefully will be implemented and brought further. But of course, this is just the end of the start. The value of this report, the value of this effort is very much up to Ukraine itself and to the receivers of this report to make happen, and hopefully that will bring the life of an investor in small-scale hydro in Ukraine sort of easier way forward. Yeah, I think that's basically what I should say here and now. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Kateryna Busol. I'm a legal associate with the EasyBusiness. This is the Ukrainian NGO that works on the elaboration of most favorable conditions for doing business in Ukraine. And in cooperation with the Norway-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Ukraine, and our Ministry of Energy, we commenced this project trying to see the principal legal steps that a developer has to undertake in Ukraine in order to develop a small-scale hydro project in Ukraine. But most importantly, we looked at the top international experiences, such as the ones of the US, Norway, and Germany, and see what gaps Ukraine has in its legal and policy regulations and what could be improved to facilitate the development of small-scale hydro in Ukraine. I will briefly elaborate on the structure of the report and our core findings. So the report includes several sections, such as land section, health, safety, environment, construction, and development sections that specify what permits during what period a developer should obtain and how he or she can do that. In the course of our analysis, we arrived at the conclusion that the process of developing a small-scale hydro project from the start, so a greenfield project, takes 2 years to commence, and a developer will have to interact about 21 state authorities of different levels, and also he or she will have to obtain about 31 permits, which is surely an excessive number. As regards the risks that we have seen, well, firstly, is that the procedure of allocation of a green tariff is not very transparent in Ukraine. So actually the green tariff is assigned to a developer after the project is conducted. So basically, when a developer starts a project, he or she does not know what kind of a green tariff and what are the conditions of selling his or her renewable energy he or she will have, which is certainly such lack of transparency and lack of surety is not favorable for an investor. Secondly, the land allotment procedures are still very tedious. Although selling and leasing land owned by the state is exempt from obligatory auction procedure as provided by Ukrainian legislation, there is still a risk that this exemption might be cancelled. Because, for instance, last year a number of tax exemptions for renewable energy were cancelled. So the risk is there. Also, as regards the tediousness of the procedure, we saw that the introduction of the so-called single window approach would be very desirable. When an investor comes to the country and applies all necessary application documents to one authority that is responsible for taking all this batch of documents through all state authorities of Ukraine as required by Ukrainian legislation. And also it's important for an investor to be able to track down the way his or her documents are proceeding. So as it is done in Norway, it's also very representative and would be a very good experience to follow for Ukraine. There are still certain social risks because many communities in Western Ukraine, where the majority of small-scale hydro projects will be developed and are developed, are a bit unaware of the environmental impacts of the projects. So they're prejudiced, they think they are harmful, and so on and so forth. So the lack of precise and up-to-date scientific data is crucial. So we need to work on that, and we need to provide the locals with a clear picture of how the renewables can be beneficial for them. I think even the such facts that as it was mentioned, that almost 90% of the energy produced in Norway is produced through through hydro. The same is with Germany, where almost 39% is produced through small-scale hydro. So I think it's very representative that such countries would not have this production if it were environmentally hazardous. So dissemination of proper scientific knowledge is important. And the last and not least is the data on the weather conditions and territorial conditions, which is important for the investors. Norway and Georgia have special web resources that provide an investor with a clear-cut picture of where the small-scale plants are stationed, what are the conditions of the environment there, what are the prospects there. So the elaboration of such a map in an electronic form and providing an open access to it will also be very beneficial for boosting the investment in this section in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sergei Upski. I'm former advisor to Mr. Demchyshin, former Minister of Energy. During this time when I occupied that office as a counselor, as an advisor, we actually launched this effort. I'm really happy that the present management of the Minister of Energy and Coal Industry has done everything possible for this work to be completed. They have provided absolute support to this project. It also gratifies my heart to realize that our Norwegian colleagues did their best for this roadmap, for the specific result be achieved in the high quality result of that. And the major task, as Richard, Arne, and Kateryna already mentioned, was for us to obtain a product which would provide an opportunity both on the part of those who actually is responsible for the development of the policy in the renewable sources of energy sphere, with the emphasis of the small-scale or micro-scale hydro projects, for them to understand what kind of hindrances and barriers we have on this way, what is our specific situation available today in Ukraine, and who are the stakeholders who are interested, speaking about the tariffs existing today. We are talking about the renewable source of energy. They have to realize all that in order to implement this kind of project. Based on the previous experience, the British company invested some money in Ukraine. I remember that was the most desirable product for Ukraine to have. Definitely to have such a product as a roadmap related to development of the small-scale hydro project is just the beginning of the road, and I'm positive that we have to make this project both for the wind energy, for solar energy, biomass sources, different alternative sources of energy. I know that the State Committee for Energy Efficiency also works on this topic. Most important for us to understand two things. Number one, that our major stakeholders, the ministry, the State Committee for Energy Efficiency, and the construction ministry, to realize that this work has been completed and we have achieved the result, and we know that they already know those results. And for those who are going to invest the money, to make it possible for them to get an access to those materials and information, not to waste their time, but understand specifically what rules of the games are available today in Ukraine, what risks they can encounter, what are the requirements and demands regarding different permits and licenses, and what they can actually get after they invest their money. I would like to emphasize that the green tariff, which exists today here, if we are talking about the project with the power generation related to the renewable source of energy, this is a very high tariff, which is a very attractive one, and I believe to some extent is going to compensate for the risks available today if we are talking about the investments to be made in Ukraine. But whatever we have to achieve, all we have to achieve in the clear, stable and comprehensible, understandable rules of the game. That was the major focus, emphasis of our work. I would like to thank for this kind of business. I was happy to be part of the team who actually launched this kind of effort, and really I'm happy that this work has been completed and at very high quality level of that. But this could be clarified where we can actually familiarize ourselves with this roadmap. Yesterday we delivered that to the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine and also to the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Ukraine, and soon we are going to put it on the website in the online and also in the business side and the governmental resources. Also, we are going to think how we're going to disseminate this knowledge among the business circles. Most likely we're going to do that via different chamber of commerce of different countries. I understand this can be done by the end of this month. You are absolutely right. Any other questions? There are no more. Okay, if you have some clarification. The only thing which I would like to once again emphasize, we always entertain the idea that this roadmap must be just the first stage for the development of the program per se, of development of the small-scale hydro project, because in Ukraine we really have a very big potential if you're talking about using our hydro resources for the generating capacities and their further development. But according to our landscape, we have to understand where such projects, where we have those hydrological best locations for development of those projects. As Kateryna mentioned, it would be very nice for us to understand what kind of program associated with development of the small-scale hydro project could be provided for its further development in the future. And thank you very much, our esteemed colleagues. Unfortunately, we are close to the end of our time bracket, but also we have the special project for reforms in the hydrological power sector. I believe when your roadmap is going to be accessible to all, we can return to this topic once again. Thank you very much. And the next topic is the EU-Ukraine relations, current progress and impasses. In a few minutes from now. Thank you.